Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan, as always, joined by Pete. Hey, Pete, what's up today?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Everything is great. It is our weekly stream or skip segment. And I know you want to recap the rules because you are so good at it.
Thank you. Stream or skip. The rules are simple. Ethan has prepared a list of TV shows he'd like me to watch. I have prepared a list of TV shows I'd like him to watch. We randomly select a new show every week. We watch at least 2 episodes from that show, and we determine on that basis, is that show worth our time, i.e. streaming it, or is it worth a skip because it's just terrible?
Let's just put this in perspective. We've done, I guess now, almost 12 segments this year. So that's like 24 total shows that we've watched. Where do you think we fall between the ratings? The last few weeks I've been a little bit on a tear with a couple of like really, really good shows that I had to watch. You started off strong, but I think you tailed off recently, right?
Yeah, and it's been relatively, I don't want to say middling overall, but when they hit hard, and when they are serious misses, they are like, I want to unsubscribe from the entire platform. Bad.
I'll go first this week because I had from Apple TV Plus a show called 5 Days at Memorial. And last week, when you assigned this to me, you were like, I have no idea what that's about. And I said, I think it's about what happened when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. So
Right.
Let me give a brief summary about Hurricane Katrina, which was a devastating Category 5 hurricane. It happened in 2005. It hit New Orleans, kind of the southern part of the United States. And while it was a very, very strong hurricane, and those hurricanes do tremendous coastal damage, what was unique about Hurricane Katrina was that the city of New Orleans, who I'm sure all of our listeners have been for Mardi Gras, New Orleans actually sits below sea level. And there are like a series of like dams or levees that they call them. And what was unique about Hurricane Katrina was not just like the wind and the rain and everything, which caused a lot of problems. There was so much water that the dams or the levees broke. And that kind of like reflooded the city. And that's where you see like all these like horrific photos and stuff. And basically the city was just like cut off from the world for a period of time. So this Apple TV Plus show describes what it was like for the people who are working at a hospital called Memorial Hospital. And they were essentially cut off from everything for 5 days. They weren't able to get any supplies. I mean, just to kind of put it in perspective, you can imagine that when you're a hospital, you're filled with people that cannot move or cannot be moved, or if they are moved, it's super difficult, right? I mean, we're not talking about people that were just coming in for like common colds. You're talking about, people kind of on life support, people who had, I don't know, I'm making this up, babies, people that were recovering from surgeries, people that you can't just like ask them to like move or, put them in a car and move them. They needed like quite a lot of logistics. So since New Orleans had been hit by hurricanes previously, everyone was kind of prepared for this to be a very bad hurricane. And everyone was kind of expecting like, hey, let's just bring our lunch, for like a day or two. It might be really bad. But, after a day or two, everything will pass and we'll be okay. We're in a very strong building. We've been through hurricanes before. And then after the levees broke and the city was reflooded, it turned into an extraordinarily dire situation. So the way that this show is set up, it's 8 episodes. And then the first few episodes are every day, so episode 1 is day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And then they show kind of the aftermath. There's obviously a lot of, drama in terms of, blame and finger pointing, all the things. So I was enthralled by this show. I thought it was superb. I have to say, I really didn't know a lot of the details of this hurricane, and I certainly didn't know anything about this Memorial Hospital, which is a true story, by the way. I'm sure some of the details were not fabricated, but, dramatized. But it is a true story, and there was a lot of news coverage about this specific hospital just because it was so high profile and so many people were stuck there for 5 days. So I watched all 8 episodes, not in one sitting, but, basically within probably 24 or 36 hours. I thought it was fantastic. A lot of the cast you kind of know, but there's not like, with my apologies to this cast, there's not like an A-list person in there, but they're all like very, very good actors that you've seen somewhere and you kind of recognize, like, oh, I saw that person in this, or oh, that person's from that, or oh, I recognize that face, So super cast, amazing story. I was really, really excited about the entire thing, and having, again, not known much about that historical event, which 2005, that's close to 20 years ago, right? It was really good, I have to say. I really loved it. I highly recommend it. And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. It is a must subscribe on Apple TV+.
Huzzah! Congratulations.
Huzzah indeed. Yeah. So I can't say enough about it. I don't think that there's any specific, I'm not a doctor. I'm not from New Orleans. I don't really have like anything specifically to tie me to the show. I think it's just very, very good entertainment. So I think it probably appeals to almost anyone, actually.
I will definitely add that to my list. I think, yet again, this shows, for all the jokes we make about Apple TV Plus as basically just a marketing platform for Apple as a tech company.
This is very good television. Yeah.
I have to say, they've generally been more hits than they have been with more misses on Apple TV.
Yeah. I also have to say, this show, maybe the show is not controversial, but obviously the hospital and that whole historical event was extraordinarily controversial. There was a lot of drama. There's a lot of news coverage about it. It was a really, really big deal. You know how sometimes shows are like, they're recreations, but then they actually have like actual CNN clips or interviews or something to kind of like show the actual thing that happened.
Yeah.
So they tied in a lot of this, and you could see, this was back when like nightly news was a thing, right? You would see like all the big name reporters, like actually did like segments on this hospital and the aftermath. It was a really big deal. So maybe not controversial for Apple to make this show, but they took a very, very, if you see it, and hopefully our viewers watch it or you watch it, you're expected to take a side. You're either on the doctor's side, like those are terrible circumstances. They were dedicated and did the best they could, without any supplies, equipment, help, blah, blah, blah. Or you're kind of on the patient side saying, well, it's a disaster, yes, but that doesn't excuse, mistake A, B, C, right? So that's, without giving away kind of the plot or the story, you're kind of expected to take a side.
Can I I'm so sorry to interrupt. And can I just say, what a relief. For a second, when you said it was going to be the doctors on one side, this says more about how messed up I am. I thought, who's going to take the side of Hurricane Katrina?
No one takes the side of Hurricane
Thank God.
Katrina.
Okay, no, all right, that's fine. So it's Dr. V patient, not Dr. V hurricane.
Yeah. It's not so much Dr. V patient, right? During the show, it's not like there's a standoff or anything.
Okay.
It's more emotionally like, hey, under the circumstances, do you believe the doctors did the best that they could, right? Knowing that they had no food, no water, no medicine, they ran out of everything, right? Do you think they did the best that they could? And if you're on the side of the doctors, you'd be like, yes, like, how can you possibly be trapped for 5 days, not have anything to work with, and expect to, give the same level of care, right? If you're on the side of the patients, and that's not to say either side is wrong, the patient's like, hey, you're a hospital, you're doctors. We were there because we were sick. We're the victims here. Don't give us all this excuses. Like, you still need to do your job, right? It may have been challenging. You're a hospital. And, it got into a very, publicly, it was also, like a big thing. And then it kind of turned into, of course, the hospital is owned by a company. So it kind of turned into, the big company versus, the patients. And it took on a little bit of a life of its own. Katrina was literally a disaster, right? I mean, that's the definition of a disaster, right? A category 5 hurricane, and then dams breaking that reflooded the city, right? And there's plenty of blame to go around that situation. But I think that I felt I was a little bit more on the side of the doctors in the hospital saying, if you could imagine working like 5 straight days without sleep, I mean, it's the dead of summer, right? Without AC, same as everyone else, you're not having food and water, you're wearing the same kind of thing every day. You're not showering. You've got your own family to worry about. It's your city. You know that your house is probably also destroyed. Not easy circumstances. And then to expect someone to give you, the optimal level of care and attention, super, super challenging.
Yeah, this sounds like the exact reason why the force majeure clause was invented for any contract, right?
That's right. So I thought it was very entertaining, and it's not really set up to be, good versus evil. That I give Apple credit. That would have been like a very easy path to go down. The focus was really on a group of people, doctors and patients, all trying to survive and do the best they could under the circumstances and how bad the circumstances were. It wasn't really set up to be confrontational, but towards the end, it kind of presented, I think, for Apple at least, a very balanced picture of each side's perspective. And, it was meant to be, I think, a little bit more like thought stimulating and not necessarily like, create a antagonistic scene for the viewers. I imagine, Pete, if you were watching this with, your family or, your girlfriend or something, it would be a fun debate to be like, yeah, but what about this? Or yeah, but what about this? Or yeah, but how about this? Or yeah, but can you imagine this? I could see it having like those kind of friendly debates, but it's not really meant to have like that fierce knockdown, drag out kind of, you're wrong, I'm right, hurt feelings kind of debate. It's more like your perspective of the entire situation.
Yeah, I get that.
So that is 5 days at Memorial, which I finished in 2 days. It's 8 episodes. It's I guess late 2022 this came out. And I've seen it on Apple TV Plus, to be honest, and it never really got me to watch it. So I'm really happy that we did it for Streamer Skip, but it's excellent. It's a must subscribe.
Amazing. So that is automatically on my list now. In the meantime, I was spending a few days last week watching Will Trent on Hulu.
Yeah, how was that?
It was exactly what I was worried it was going to be. That's not to say this is a bad thing. So when you told me it was about like a police detective and the mysteries, the first thing that came to mind and the first thing I said was, I hope it's not a police procedural.
Is it a police procedural?
It is a police procedural. Let's start with the premise. The premise is that the show is about a guy named Will Trent. Surprise, surprise.
Yep.
It's set in Atlanta, Georgia. And Will Trent is an agent for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, so the GBI. It's very local and based only in that state. But because it's not a federal unit like the Federal Bureau of Investigation is, they tend to work more with the local law enforcement. And so the whole point was that, even though he's a part of the GBI, really they're both working for Atlanta Police Department. They're assigned on the same cases as the Atlanta Police Department. They trade detectives back and forth. So I'm sure this is a little bit more fictional than it is procedurally accurate.
Right.
Or, in terms of jurisdiction. Will Trent, as you said correctly last week, is portrayed as like a super cop. Very, very much on the side of the law is the law. In fact, we learn within the first 12 minutes of the episode, we established that the guy is a pretty super agent. He rescues and adopts a dog. He's been attacked by police officers because he uncovered and arrested a bunch of corrupt police officers. They paint his car with the word traitor on it, things like that. He steps into a crime scene, the first crime scene of the first episode, and within 3 minutes of stepping into that crime scene, he's able to ascertain what happened and how it happened.
Let me guess. He has no wife, no kids. He lives all alone. He's got like this very Spartan lifestyle.
Exactly.
Then, right?
And not just that, he's an orphan. He's got weird tics. He's got a very abrasive personality.
Yeah.
And
like
we
House,
learned that,
right?
he was raised in a childhood home, that sort of thing. And then we learned throughout the course of the series is that he's dyslexic and he hides that from everyone. But, I think I'm not, so I don't know what the stigma around dyslexia is. But like when you tell me someone's dyslexic, like I don't think less of that person. And I certainly wouldn't think like that would affect your job per se. Like, of course, I'm sure that, maybe reading is a little bit more difficult. But in terms of abilities and in terms of core skills, I don't see that as being something and again, this could be maybe me misunderstanding it, but I don't see that as such a negative stigma, at least in today's world. But on this show, he goes to extreme lengths to hide it. It's okay. Look, this is as average a show as you can get. It's a police procedural.
It's on Netflix, right?
This is on Hulu. And I'll have news about that before we end this episode. But so the cast has a bunch of familiar faces in it, but you probably don't know their names. Like his boss at the GBI is someone who, again, I could not tell you her name, but I recognize her immediately because she was on The Wire. There's a lot of these kinds of faces in there. And then, of course, a bunch of guest stars that you will definitely recognize. It's fine. It's something that you can keep on in the background because you're ironing your clothes or you're folding laundry or, you're checking on emails and you just want to have something on in the background, or you're having cereal and you have 30 minutes to kill before you have to head to the office in the morning, that kind of thing.
How many seasons so far?
At the moment, there's only the one season. I think there's only 8, maybe 10 episodes. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure this is going to get renewed for season 2, if it already hasn't.
Oh, really?
Just because this is the kind of low budget popcorn-esque TV show that a standard studio would need for the midweek filler. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I don't mean to say the show looks bad. I just think that it's a cop procedural, right? You need a crime scene, which could be somebody's house. You don't need elaborate sets for these kinds of things.
Right. Everything can be a little bit dirty and disheveled.
Exactly. And it doesn't just work for the budget, but it's also show appropriate.
Right.
So I just don't see this as a show that costs $1 million an episode to make. Or whatever that final number is, $10 million, $50 million. Like, we have these ridiculous budgets for Game of Thrones. That would never apply to a show like this.
Citadel, cough, cough. Citadel.
Yeah, exactly. So this is as middle of the road as you can get. This, you could have put this on any of the Alphabet Channel networks. This could be another CSI. It could be another NYPD Blue. It could be another one of those. The only difference is that unlike those other shows, which are also, I think, changing, it weaves an intermittent plot that's kind of continuous between shows. But again, meh, it's just very generic. This is as strong a mooch as you can get. So I wouldn't subscribe to Hulu for the show, certainly, but I wouldn't, turn it off if it were on.
Do you think that when you described this, what I thought was House MD, remember the show about the doctor?
Yes.
Is your character, Will Trent, weird enough? Because House was like a little bit eccentric and abrasive, right? And that was the appeal of that medical procedural. Is Will Trent weird enough, do you think, in this?
Yes, in the sense that because the dichotomy of House was that he was an asshole, but he was also brilliant. A genius, and all of the out of the box thinking worked. at the end of the day.
And remember, he had a physical handicap,
Exactly.
which was also instrumental. Yeah.
In 8 episodes, I think he lost, like, and I'm speaking off the top of my head, but I think there was only 1, maybe 2 episodes that he dealt with the repercussions of losing a patient because of his behavior. Right. So in 8 seasons out of 22 episodes, in 160 episodes, he only lost 1 patient.
Oh, is that right?
Something like that. It was single digit numbers. Let's put it that way.
Huh.
The conceit of House is I'm an asshole, I'm a jerk, but I'm also a genius. I know it, you know it. So let's do the dance. I'm going to suggest this crazy procedure. You're going to say no. I'm going to go behind your back and do it anyway. You're going to threaten to fire me for it. And then lo and behold, as you're threatening to fire me for it, the patient's going to come out of the coma and is going to be totally fine. Effectively, that was the conceit every episode, different variations of that. In this case, it's kind of like Sherlock Holmes in the sense that he's got the same kind of mentality, which is he's abrasive because he believes that he's right and he knows that he's right. But in the sense that he also obeys the law and he's very self-righteous is the way I would suggest. Along the same lines, but I think nowhere near as distinct as House, and maybe doesn't have the charisma that House has. But in the end of the day, it's the same format. It's just instead of a hospital, it's a police station.
From what you're describing, I think I would maybe take it, if I were developing the show, I would take it like 1 step further and make it kind of a really stereotypical kind of like Southern Baptist, super kind of religious, person. And you see how straight and narrow they are. And sometimes that what you're saying is basically like they are at all times strictly compliant with the law. And you see like somehow, they enforce the law, even when it's like a stupid rule or unfair, and how that's not right. And how sometimes, their application of the law doesn't allow them to, convict someone who we think is guilty, but then other times, they really do kind of like the right thing, based on kind of like their religious beliefs or their moral beliefs. Something like this, maybe where it's a little bit more pronounced, would be more compelling, where you're like, this person is really annoying, but they are a good person, So like the anti-House in a way.
They kind of try to do that here, and the conceit that odd quirk of his isn't that he's ultra religious, but that odd quirk was that he's raised in this children's home as an orphan, and the person who ran that home was like a strict taskmaster, and he was raised as like a gentleman, so he wears a 3-piece suit everywhere.
Oh yeah.
He carries a handkerchief, and everyone chides him for that.
Right.
I mean, you've been to Atlanta. I've been to Atlanta. The weather at best is not conducive to wearing a 3-piece suit every day of the year. But he's the type of guy who does that anyway. The way they show him as kind of being a little loose and off the cuff is that he hand built and hand restored his car, which is a 74 Porsche Targa. It's to their credit, the showrunners have tried to give him a bit of a different personality.
Yeah.
But the reality is that in a procedural, there's only so many things you can do before people still uncover the formula. And ultimately, there is a formula. That's why it's formulaic. That's why it's a procedural. That's why these shows are great middle of the week shows that you can keep on the background because you don't have to pay attention fully to know what's going on. And if you watch for 10 minutes, any seasoned TV viewer will kind of understand where the show is going. Right. And you'll be within 10 to 20% of what the final answer is.
Right. You can miss an episode and it doesn't like totally screw you on like the ongoing plot as well.
Exactly. And there is a thread or plot, but it really was so generic and so, I don't want to say mediocre because I don't want to imply that it was bad, but it was just so meh that it's just like, all right, you're absolutely right. If you missed episode 5 and started watching again episode 6, you're smart enough and experienced enough that you would be able to figure out what happened in episode 5 on the basis of how they're reacting. Will Trent
on Hulu.
On Hulu. Not a bad show, just not my cup of tea. I give this a solid mooch. I expect that, if you really like these kinds of things, you'll love it. But I don't think anyone's going to say, oh, this is the worst show on TV. A quick break before we talk about what we're watching next week. I just wanted to say,
Yes.
so you know how we've been talking about Hulu and we've been talking about how there are so many different streaming platforms and how that's been such a pain in the ass for not just you and me. I mean, especially for you and me because we're subscribed to all of these, but in general for society, it's a colossal pain in the ass, right? So day before yesterday, news dropped that before the end of this year, or I think before the end of this fiscal year, so probably by the end of Q1 24, Disney plans on merging Hulu with Disney Plus on the one app.
Oh.
You'll still need a Hulu subscription, which is a bit odd, but there will only be one unified app. There will no longer be a separate Hulu app. It'll just be the Disney Plus app. And the Disney Plus app will have all of Disney Plus's shows, will have all of ESPN Plus, and will have all of Hulu on there. And then, of course, the idea is that instead of having 3 subscriptions in one app, the idea is that they're probably going to use this as an opportunity for people to say, hey, instead of paying $8 for Hulu, $8 for Disney Plus, and $4 or $5 for ESPN, why don't you just take a bundle of all 3 for like $12?
Yeah, it's inevitable.
I mean, if you look at it this way, Disney's got 220 odd million subscribers, including its Hulu things. But the point is that people who watch Hulu aren't necessarily cross-subscribed to Disney Plus and vice versa. I think by merging it, at least on an app basis, you're more likely to increase your subscriber base because when it comes time to hit subscribe at the end of your year, I mean, if it were me, I would look at the fact and say like, well, I might as well pay the extra $4 and get all 3 of the services on the same app.
My perspective is financially, I don't care, or it's good for me because I don't subscribe to ESPN, but I already have Disney Plus and I already have Hulu. As an entertainment fan, I'm super disappointed, and I know you know why. And it's because once Hulu is interchangeable with Disney, the type of content they produce is going to, I think, become much less edgy. I don't think Disney does a show like Handmaid's Tale. I don't think Disney does a show like The Bear.
Yeah.
I really don't think that Disney does that type of stuff on Hulu anymore. And suddenly Hulu eventually dries up and we're just left with Disney and a bunch of Marvel spinoffs and Star Wars spinoffs, which we both love, but we don't get that edgy original content that Hulu, I think, was known for because Hulu was small and Hulu needed to stand out in a crowded market. So Hulu took more risks, and some of those risks were super, super well done and entertaining. I don't feel like Disney's going to do the same.
That is a genuine cause for concern. I'm not sure if that will happen, but the potential risk is significantly high.
Yeah.
Because even though let's say they're merging their offerings under one app and not merging the studios, there's still a chance that doesn't happen. But I do agree with you only because I sneakingly suspect that sometime next year, Disney's just going to be like, all right, enough with the 75% ownership crap. Let's just buy the other 25% of Hulu and be the wholesome owners and merge the services into one subscription service.
Yeah.
I'm with you. On that basis, I'm totally with you. That is a cause for legitimate concern. But having said that, the upside is, so the second part of this quote unquote breaking news segment is Paramount Plus outlined their financial results and they have lost a crap ton of money. I think it was like $450 or $500 million in the last quarter.
Oh my gosh, I'm so surprised. I can't believe it. I never saw it coming, Pete.
So, I mean, regular listeners.
I'm aghast. I am aghast.
I think what Ethan has so eloquently showcased there is that it shouldn't come to any surprise to our listeners that this has happened, because we've been saying this from the get-go. Paramount is a great studio, but it probably doesn't have A, the resources, and B, the content library to justify having its own streaming platform.
I don't think they've got the brains or the balls, right? I mean, to be honest, that's the only thing that's really holding them back. They don't have any good content. Apart from Yellowstone, let's take our obligatory head bow to the original Yellowstone. Apart from that, Paramount Plus hasn't done anything, have they?
Yeah, it's got a few things here and there, but certainly nothing consistently good.
Yeah.
In terms of a studio, Paramount isn't. I'm not saying that they're a small studio. They're still quite big, but they don't pump out the volume that the other studios do. Universal, Sony, and Disney, or not Sony, sorry, Warner Brothers and Disney, they're machines. They're putting out 12, 15, 25 movies a year. And coupled with their libraries, that's enough to justify a streaming platform. In this case, I'm more skeptical, one. And two, for those of you who are still on the fence and say that Paramount should, I would suggest you look at Sony's platform and what Sony has done. Sony doesn't have its own streaming platform, except for Crunchyroll, which is, again, their anime platform.
Right.
But Sony very wisely said, hey, listen, we own a ton of fantastic IP. We don't want to pump a couple $2 billion into a streaming service, because the problem with having a streaming service is then you are beholden to creating content for that service. And if you think that's a problem, let's look at Disney. That's exactly what they're doing, is they're creating program after program, movie after movie, relatively consistently. More of those movies have been not hits than hits. And that's a problem. So Sony said, hey, you know what we're going to do? Netflix, we'll sell you the rights for these 10 movies for the next 10 years in the US. In Canada, we'll go to Crave. In the UK, we'll go to Amazon Prime. Sony generated something like, and don't hold me to these numbers, I'm just guessing, but I think Sony did something like $3 billion in sales on their IP for the next 10 years. That's fantastic. That's really good. That's $3 billion of additional revenue that they generated at no additional cost to them. My feeling is that on the basis of what Paramount Plus has done, and we're already seeing everyone scale back. Warner Brothers is cutting their content spend on Max. Netflix is doing the same. Disney is doing the same. Everyone's kind of paring down. I think the writing's on the wall. I'm not saying it's going to happen today. I'm not going to say it's happening tomorrow. But sometime in the next 12 to 24 months, someone at Paramount Plus is going to wake up and say, hey, guys, this is stupid. Let's pull the plug on Paramount Plus. Let's just sell Yellowstone to Amazon.
And Tulsa King
to Netflix. If Netflix is prepared to pay $500 million for Seinfeld for 10 years, I'm sure they'll pay at least $150 million for Yellowstone for 5 years.
Yeah.
For a show like Yellowstone and for Paramount, $150 million is not an insignificant number, especially when they're just giving up the licensing rights for one territory for a couple of years.
I agree. Look, I mean, on Paramount Plus, they have Yellowstone, of course, but I feel like Yellowstone is done. I know they're trying to make it a universe, but I'm not convinced. They had the Offer, which we loved, which was kind of a one-season documentary.
Yep.
Picard, I haven't loved it, although I think you liked it more than I did.
The last season, by the way, has been phenomenal, and it
that's what I've heard.
Completely erases the deficit that the first two seasons created.
Tulsa King's been amazing. I have to say, Tulsa King's been a huge win.
Yep.
So, but that's kind of their only, and then Halo, don't get us started, right?
Yeah.
So if you're really looking at like a sustainable series, it's Tulsa King, right? Halo would be if they could get their act together, but like they're pretty far from that now. So
I would go and say that Star Trek has limited appeal, and that's not a knock on Star Trek. I think most people aren't as big into Star Trek as, for example, we are. So I
Yeah.
think that
Especially a younger generation. Yeah.
it's still a relatively niche offering. I think that's why they're having a tough time coming up with the justification to make a
Yeah.
new Star Trek movie. Because say what you will about Star Wars, even if the movies were bad, they were all billion-dollar movies. So
Yeah.
I think that if Disney had the right idea, I think they would gladly make and fund a new Star Wars movie. But Paramount has been sitting on theoretically the Star Trek franchise for a couple of years now. They still haven't figured out what they want to do with it. So its appeal is limited to TV series at the moment. And of all the TV
Right.
series, my favorite is still Lower Decks, which is an animated show. For me, at least, that says something about the strength of the Star Trek universe at the moment.
That's right.
Anyway, so
Uh,
that was my tangent
that is
on
breaking
the
news.
streaming
That is breaking
platforms.
news. And I agree with you. I mean, given the limited volume of what's on Paramount Plus, it's actually worth streaming. Either they need to go big and they need to dedicate more money to original, content, or I agree they should do something with Netflix or Amazon or whoever and just kind of like JV it, joint venture, and
I think they had the perfect idea with
yeah,
Amazon. All the Star Trek stuff was coming on Amazon in the UK, for
yeah,
example. I thought
yeah,
that was the perfect idea. I don't want
yeah,
to subscribe to Paramount Plus. Of course, we are, but I don't want to have to. We're recording this on May 13th, 2023. Mark this date on your calendars. This is when Pete says the writing is on the wall. I would expect that within the next 12 to 24 months, Paramount says, here's an extra $10 billion, and we're really going at it for Paramount Plus, or they pull the plug and just say, you know what, we're going to just license our franchises out to everybody else. But anyway, that's where we are with streaming platforms.
Okay, kind of a mid-year assessment, right?
Yeah, just before we get into the swing of summer, shall we talk about what we're watching next week?
Oh, I saw what you gave me next week. I'm already scared.
I don't know if should be. So for next week, you and I are both on Netflix. You'll be
Okay.
watching Sweet Tooth, which just got renewed for a third season.
It looks scary. It sounds like it's about, I don't know what it sounds like, but Sweet Tooth, it looks super scary to me.
So I saw a trailer, and this is, months ago when I put this on your
Yeah,
list. And if I remember this show correctly, I think this is actually a post-apocalyptic sci-fi series, not a
I
horror
think so
series.
also. I mean, I saw something with like deer antlers and people just kind of like dressed up like they're definitely living in the wild. It looked creepy slash scary to me.
I saw the tag as being sci-fi, so I was hoping that it would have some good sci-fi elements in it.
All
But
right.
let's hopefully, knock on wood, that's what it
We'll
is.
find out next week.
I am watching a show called Transatlantic.
What's transatlantic? I signed that to you and I can't even remember.
Yeah, so I don't know. I do know that I read an article that Gillian Jacobs is in it. She played Britta Perry on Community. At least that's when I first knew of her.
Okay.
I'm going to take a wild guess. I don't know anything, but I'm going to guess it's one of two things. Considering this is Netflix and considering Netflix has a history of having controversial shows and making controversial decisions, this could have something to do with like the transgender movement, right? Because it could be a play on the word transatlantic.
Okay.
It could be that. Or maybe they just went, middle of the road. It's got something to do with like a cruise liner or like the Titanic or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, it sounds very Titanic-y.
So I'm
Yeah.
not sure what it is. I just don't know anything about it, but I know that Jillian Jacobs in it and I really like her, so I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Transatlantic on Netflix and Sweet Tooth
Also on Netflix.
Also on Netflix. Let's see how they treat us this week, huh?
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So that is stream or skip for this week. We had one must subscribe. That's 5 Days Immemorial. We had one very strong mooch, Will Trent.
That's right.
Any recommendations, feedbacks, comments?
Tweet at us at FNS Podcast or DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast or email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. And of course, we'd appreciate if you'd like this video and leave a comment below. That always helps us out.
Please do. We'll see you on the next episode of Films and Stuff. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ethan.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.